what is it that we experience as Indians? There is, just by sheer dint of our history and our collective experience, there is a schizophrenia both for Indians and Hindus, particularly in India, and definitely for Hindus abroad. We've been given a very, very cruel choice. We've been given a choice to either pick and choose artha, which is, our material prosperity and our ability to sustain and create wealth and stability for our children, or you can choose dharma. And this choice is by design. And when you realize it and when you see it, you cannot unsee it. Sai Deepak, in fact, mentions this in his book. He says, how do you recognize the value of something, the existence of which has been hidden from you? And this is the challenge that we have as Hindus, because our education system, the public culture, the global zeitgeist has always worked in great consonance to actually hide everything that is of Hindu origin from us. And stories about India, stories about Hinduism, and this has been a project going on at least for 500 years in a very, very systematic, strategic way, what we call Western Indology. They affect everything that you get to do. We might not be able to see it unless you unwrap and unpack the layers. Trump is a disruptor on both sides of the aisle. In fact, a lot of his agenda today, if you really seriously analyze, is actually what would have been a Democrat agenda. He's talking about interest of the working class. He's talking about protection. These are not typically conservative Republican themes. So there is no clarity on what the American political system itself stands for. And within that, when they're trying to hold on to the power, and there's a great challenge in the form of China, they have a reason to make sure that India is sort of constricted and restricted to a certain space. We just want, from an US perspective, the strategic thinking in US is that India has to be just two things. India has to be a geopolitical and particularly military hedge against China. They would be happy if we give them space to launch some arms and build some bases here. And they have to be, India has to be a market for making sure that the American economic engine continues. They have no other role for India. By definition, this is the structure and thinking that will govern their relationship with Hindus primarily. And this won't change. So we're a bunch of creative professionals who started asking this question, how do we address this challenge? And when we looked at this, we said, firstly, of course, we need to distinguish ourselves from the offerings that are there so that it is truly of value. And there is a lot of architecture already in place for Hindu civilization. What this program adds is essentially the civilizational superstructure. The schools of thought that are critical for a young Hindu to understand, whether you're in India or in US, you need to understand not just yourself, but also the enemies and their line of attack. This is like playing a test match, right? And we are in the second innings, and we need the Washington Sundars and the Jadejas to come out. But they can do that only if they have a game plan. And that game plan is not just spiritual, it is not just cognitive, it is not just political. There has to be a civilizational scale understanding of the history of civilizations itself, beginning with the history of civilizations, understanding the manifestations of the ideologies into modern forms. A word like secularism feels very benign, but the history of secularism and the violence it has unleashed in India is extraordinary. And this course is to equip with that kind of clarity. It has a spiritual core, but it has an intellectual core, it has an emotional core, it has an experiential core, and it has a very strong cognitive, tarka-based or argumentative-based intelligence embedded into it.